Hey, good evening. This is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. Hey AJ, thank you for moderating my stream once more. And before we start, please read the disclaimer. We are talking about playing a computer game, even if we are striving to understand the regulatory and technical concepts involved as thoroughly as possible. We are obviously not talking about driving real trains. So please leave the real trains and the railway infrastructure alone so that they can do their job without interfering. Hey CD Radar, thank you for the starting joke. What is it? Let me read it first before I read it aloud. Vater, Sohn, du wurdest adoptiert. Sohn, was? Wer sind meine richtigen Eltern? Vater, das sind wir. Pack deine Tasche, du wirst gleich abgeholt. Okay, that is not a railway joke. I have to complain about that. But well, maybe I can translate it into Czech sometime soon because it is I'm actually trying to learn some Czech to understand that rules, those rules that you sent me about the Czech signaling, and then I hope that DTG will finally have a Czech route so that we can actually do some train driver check. So, what are we going to do today? We are going to do today all the that will never happen. Well, a Czech route in train sim world. Why not? I want one. I would like to have fun. A Polish route, a Czech route, more French routes, Belgian routes. There is so much uh, in lore that we can learn and discuss about signaling systems and safety systems. Much more would be welcome. What do we want to do today? I want to do French safety systems today, and I want to cram all the possible penalty breaks that this train can do into this stream. So obviously, since there is only one French route, we are playing this one French route, and it's the service that we played already in the first French stream, the one that can be delayed for 1 minute, and then you get a nice signal that stops the train and keeps you there, and you must remain at the signal to let two other trains that come from the opposite direction pass. So we can use this service for discussing all the kinds of penalty breaks that this train can do. I couldn't find a good railway joke in a hurry, so I used a spare one. Okay, that is okay. That is okay. I'm very happy that you're always contributing the joke in the beginning, because I myself am so great at jokes. Let's set up the train. We've already seen the test in the KVB display. We will talk about the KVB display a lot today. So just let's power up our train and get it up and running. Also turn on all the safety systems. Why did I open this door now? I didn't want to do that. For the corridor, we want to have some gauge lights. And we do our brake test quickly. See if everything works. Brakes released, yes. What we haven't done so far in the test sequence is the VACMA self-test. And I just found out in preparing for this stream that this train actually can do a VACMA self-test, and it is actually working. Reverse is already forward, interesting. When did I do that? So, those two buttons here for the VACMA, VACMA cancel and VACMA test. To test the VACMA function that initiates a penalty brake if you are not holding down the vigilance pedal, can be tested here when the train is standing still. And it worked. we could say that it initiated a penalty brake as soon as the pedal was not pressed. And this self-test can be initiated with this switch. We depress the pedal, and after 2.5 seconds it will initiate an emergency brake. We can release this by just taking our PBL handle and get it back. So this is the first penalty brake that we can do already when the train is sitting in a standstill at the station. We will just start the train that we are running 1 minute late in departure, and I hope that we released the brakes after the penalty brake application soon enough. So next penalty brake that we are going to test is the VACMA penalty brake for real, not with the test function, but it is the driver falls unconscious, falls out of his chair penalty brake if the vigilance pedal is no longer depressed for 2.5 seconds. So I just stand up, stand behind my seat, alarm, and penalty brake. You can see we can release it even before the train gets to a standstill. The brakes don't release that fast, so it is not so easy to get to a prevent the train from going into a standstill. We can use this brake overcharge button to release the brakes a bit faster. So that was the first real penalty brake. If you're not depressing this pedal here, after 2.5 seconds the train goes into a penalty brake because it has the idea that the driver is incapacitated. Then obviously there is always the possibility that the driver slumps onto the pedal, is incapacitated but still pressing down the vigilance pedal, so we need a function that tests if the driver is actually active. This is why you have to depress the pedal and repress it if you're not using any controls every 30 to 60 seconds depending on the train. For that I will just not touch any controls, not touch the pedal, and we will see if that kind of penalty brake actually gets initiated. We will hear a different alarm. It is not this low horn for the pedal is not being depressed alarm, but we will hear a sound that sounds like an old school telephone going off. AJ asks, do penalty brakes always bring the train to a standstill, or can you keep it from stopping after a certain point? That depends. We will get to that when we have the presentation. Some penalty brakes can be interrupted and the driver can take back control, and some can't. This is the alarm for not operating any controls. And we got our penalty brake. This one can be released as soon as the train is at a standstill. Horror game vibes. Yeah. So I can release it, but what also happened, you can see that the main circuit breaker got blown. We have to rearm it to be able to start again. Good thing I always have the brake overcharge on, what is not so great in itself, but it prevents us from sitting too long here. It's a school bell. Yeah, everyone connects something different with this sound. For me it is an old school telephone, for AJ it is horror movie vibes, and for ZD Radar it is a school bell. Alright, next thing on my list is a penalty brake for not satisfying the Crocodile system. We can accelerate a bit, and very soon we will cross a Crocodile, and this will require us to hit the acknowledge button. But we won't do this, and so we are bound to get a penalty brake. Am I speeding? No, I'm not speeding. That's a good thing. Well, school and horror is close to each other, CD Radar says. That might actually be true. So at the next Crocodile, here is a Crocodile, but you see this yellow lamp is flashing, waiting for our acknowledgement, and since we did not provide any acknowledgement, the train is getting to a standstill. This is a penalty brake that, to my knowledge, cannot be interrupted. Again, it flipped the main circuit breaker. I cannot rearm it, not unless the train has come to a standstill, actually. And not before I press the acknowledge button, then the yellow lamp stops flashing but is lit steadily, and then I can rearm the main circuit breaker, I can recharge the brakes, and hopefully go on. So this is the Crocodile system, or the official name for the Crocodile system, the Répétition de signaux, I think, is the French name for it. And yeah, this totally reminds us of the British AWS system. Hitting a magnet, it's not a magnet in the Crocodile system, but the same principle. We have to acknowledge it because there is a closed signal up ahead, and if we don't, we get a penalty brake. You tried to see it, but no success. What did you try to see? The Crocodile? Oh, maybe. Yeah, we will see the Crocodile better when we are trying to sneak by a red signal. The Crocodile thingy on the rail. What is the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? One will see you later, one will see you in a while. Yeah, that is pretty much it, I guess. Now we're getting a yellow signal, and at this Crocodile we have to... Can you see it now, AJ? This Crocodile thingy. Now I acknowledged it. We did not get a penalty brake. The yellow lamp turned from flashing to steady on the acknowledge. And now the system, the Crocodile system, is happy. What is not so happy, or what will not be so happy with our driving, is the KVB system. What the left half of this panel is for. The KVB system is now actually checking if we are complying with the signal. The Crocodile system is quite... it is not so sophisticated. For the Crocodile system, just like the AWS, it is enough that you acknowledge. If you actually comply with the signal, like here, yellow signal, you're approaching a red. The Crocodile system can't check, but the KVB system can. And soon enough you will see here on the indicator that we were getting an alarm and a penalty brake. So the first thing that happened was that the V indicator went off, the alarm went off, beep, 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 and then we got an FU, not for, well, but for freinage d'urgence, what is French for, yeah, emergency brake. Again, main circuit breaker got flipped. All we have to do, acknowledge. Then we can rearm. Then we can release the brake. So here, it was not the Crocodile system, but the KVB system that stopped us for not complying with the signal aspects. We will see how exactly this is done. But this stopped us now. On the KVB panel, you can see the double zeros that tell us that we are approaching a stop signal or a buffer block and are required to slow down to 30 kilometers. Soon there will be a third zero when we're closing in on the red signal, telling us that we will have to slow down to 10 kilometers in the approach. So that is a very simplified brake curve that is here. You can see the 3 zeros. And now I'm just trying to sneak past the red signal, vitesse, and then another penalty brake because we tried to pass the red signal. Okay. That was almost a full set of penalty brakes. There is one more possibility of a penalty brake when driving under TVM. And I want to round up all those thingies with the presentation now. So what safety systems do we have on our train here? To check if the driver is present and to check if the driver is active. We have one system that does both with two different subsystems. We have seen them in action both. This is the VACMA system. It is French for Veille automatique à contrôle de maintien d'appui, or is more or less an automatic vigil for the to control if the pressing down of the pedal is kept up. This is how I translate it, at least. If it is correct, you can correct me in the comments. So if you don't comply with that system, you will get an alarm. Actually, there are two different kinds of alarm. We have heard that. And if you still do not comply, you will get a penalty brake. We have seen that. So to check if the driver is reacting to signals and track speed limits, we have three systems actually that provide this security feature. The first one was the Crocodile, that is actually called the Répétition des signaux, or RS. Crocodile is the name it is most famous for, and we will see why it is called a crocodile. And we have seen it in certain situations when a signal or a sign is displaying an aspect that you have to react to. Then you will get this one-time beep and you have to hit the acknowledge, and if you don't hit the acknowledge, you will get a penalty brake. The KVB system, we have seen it in action. It is the system that controls if the driver is actually complying with what the signals or the signs tell him. It works up to a speed of 160 kilometers, and it does not show the driver the speed that it controls him against, but it will stop the train if the driver does not comply. He will get an overspeed alarm first. We have seen this. It's the V indicator, and if the driver still does not comply with the speed that the system is controlling the driver to, we will get a penalty brake. Then there, within the KVB system, there is this Contrôle d'arrêt absolu. This is the absolute train stop or positive train stop. This is the system that stops a train or prevents a train from running a red signal. Obviously, when the train is trying to run a red signal, there is no point in alarming the driver or warning him. Then, without more ado, a penalty brake will be applied. We have seen that in the access system, for example. It is the 2000 Hertz magnets in the PCB system, or the train stop facility in the TPWS system, for example. So we will find this in a lot of systems that actually prevent the train from passing a red signal. Not really preventing it from passing a red signal in this context, but from going on along a longer distance after the red signal to stop it in the overlap. And the last system that acts in this context, checking if the driver is reacting to signals and track speed limits, is the COVIT system, what has nothing to do with Corona, and it is written with a T in the end, obviously, and it is the Contrôle de vitesse associé à la TVM. That is the overspeed control that we have when we are running with the cap speed signaling system, TVM 413. Yeah, that was the overview, and now we can look at all the systems in itself. Obviously, yeah, the COVID system can make a penalty brake without an alarm, actually, if the driver is not respecting the indications that the cap signals show to him. VACMA first. This is the thing you operate your VACMA system with, the pedals. You put your feet on it and you typically depress them, and you have to actively remove your foot to depress the pedal and press them again to show the train that you are still there. And systems like this are simulated in the game in a way that as long as you are sitting down, the pedal is considered pressed, yeah, and you have to hit the button to depress the pedal, and as soon as you let go of the button, then you will press the pedal again. And if you stand up, obviously then the pedal is no longer pressed, and then the alarm can go off. We have seen that we have one system that controls if the driver is present. You have to, in general, press it down, put your foot on the pedal. So this is the more or less old classic dead man switch facility. You have to show that you are there, and if you are falling out of your seat, then you're no longer depressing the pedal probably, and then you will have a reaction of the system. This is the contrôle de relâchement d'appui. That is the control that checks if you are pressing down the pedal, and if you are not pressing down the pedal or a respective button. Sometimes there are buttons that you can push down instead of the pedal when you have to stand in a different position in your locomotive because you might be shunting and have to look out of the window. So the button is replacing the pedal in this context, and if you're failing to do this for more than 5 seconds, then we'll get the penalty brake. After 2.5 seconds, the alarm will go off. This was this deep horn whoop that we heard. And 2.5 seconds later, we will get the penalty brake. That is releasable in itself if you're fast enough to actually be able to release the brakes, even if the train has not come to a standstill so far. The other system in the VACMA is the Contrôle du maintien d'appui. That is the system that checks if the driver is actually active. Pressing down the pedal alone does not catch the situation where the driver is unconscious and slumping on the pedal. So you have to operate controls, or if you don't operate controls, you have to let go and repress the pedal within 60 seconds. And on some trains it is 30 seconds, depending on the train. If you don't do that after 55 or 30 seconds, then you will get the alarm. This is this ringing alarm, this old school telephone, school bell horror movie alarm. And if you do not comply after 2.5 seconds, you will get the same penalty brake that is again releasable. We have seen that there are two buttons or two switches on our cab. The first one was the test switch. When we are standing still, the VACMA system is typically disabled. It needs a certain minimum speed for it to come active, and with the test button you can actually check it. You just flip the test button, and then you can see if the alarm comes off and if the train actually applies a penalty brake. The other button, the VACMA cancel button, is a button that has in the game no functionality, because typically the VACMA system, if the driver fails to comply with those things that are stated on the bottom of this slide, then the system will think the driver has a problem, is unconscious or whatever, and it will send an alarm to the dispatcher 30 seconds after the penalty brake occurred. And if the driver for some reason is not unconscious and the penalty brake just happened for other reasons and the driver can still react, then he can cancel this alarm by flipping this switch. and then the dispatcher will not get an alarm and will not send the paramedics or whomever he can send. But in the game, obviously, there will be no dispatcher helping you, and on the other hand, you won't be unconscious or whatever, so it is not necessary that you cancel this VACMA alarm. But if you want to role play a bit, actually, if you happen to get a VACMA penalty break, you can flip the switch so that at least the dispatcher is not concerned about your health and will not send the cavalry. That is the VACMA system with its two possible penalty breaks. The other thing is the Crocodile system, the Répétition de signaux. It checks if the driver is reacting to signals and track speed limits both. This is why I colored this arrow with two colors, green and purple. This is what those thingies look like. AJ managed to see it actually in the game, and I tried to take a picture of those thingies in a way that you can imagine why it is called a crocodile. You have two little eyes, you have this long nose, and then this jagged body. And the fun thing, actually, well, let's see, this is the crocodile. Can you see it? This is why it is called a crocodile. It is not a magnet, though. The trains actually have a metal brush on the attached to the floor, and the brush will touch this thing, and there will be a current, or at least a voltage transferred to the train. And if the voltage is positive, then the train knows, whoops, there is a signal that is set to danger ahead or a speed limit, and then the system will go off. And if the current or the voltage is negative, then the system will not react. So again, my Crocodile, and this is the part of our display, our KVB display that is associated with the Crocodile system. As soon as we are getting a signal fermé, caution signal from the Crocodile transponder, then we will get this beep that we have heard, and the yellow lamp will start flashing. And we have to push our acknowledge button, acquittement, within 5 seconds, I think. Otherwise, we will get a penalty break 5 seconds later. So we have to acknowledge signals that require you to stop, or announce a stop on the next signal, or announce a reduction in speed limit, or certain speed limit announcement boards, the TIFs in the French system. We will get to speed signaling and speed signal board in a different stream, so I will only touch this very casually here. And I won't go into the details which signals or require you to react that way. It is more or less every signal that is not green and not a yellow signal that just tells you to actually go slow 30 or 60. All the other signals more or less can at least require you to acknowledge them. Yeah, but in the game actually you will always get this beep and the flashing yellow lamp, and if you get it, then you acknowledge it. Yeah, that is that. And if you don't acknowledge it, then 5 seconds later you will get the penalty break that you can only release if you have come to a stop. Press the acknowledge button, and then you have to rearm the main circuit breaker, release the brakes manually, and then you can continue your driving. Crocodile system, next system, KVB. Contrôle de vitesse par balise, speed control with balises. You see that the control written with a C is actually shortened with a K to distinguish the control from the command. At least this is the explanation given by this anomaly, this is the word, the anomaly appears here. And also this system is checking if the driver is reacting to signal and track speed limits, not only like the Crocodile if he has seen the signal actually, but if he is actually complying with it. So those balises look like those thingies, at least in the game. They look pretty much like Euro balises for the TCS system, and the train gets a lot or a bunch of data through this balises, especially about incoming speed reductions. And then the driver obviously has to respect the speed limits, and including brake curves. We will see what that means, including brake curves. The system will not show the driver the speed limits, but it will it will assume that the driver knows how fast he can go, and it will just check him against those limits. The Contrôle d'arrêt absolu, we have talked about this. This is the part in the KVB system that without any alarm stops the train. If you try to run a red signal. Again, this is the display unit for it, and interesting for us in the KVB system is the left side. CD radar says absurd that the system is not telling the driver the speed. Well, it is obviously not the most modern system, unlike the Axis system, for example, that shows you the maximum speed that is operating under. The KVB system does not. What do we have on our display here? We have two displays that can show numbers and letters. The left one is the visualisateur auxiliaire, and the other one is the visualisateur principal. So this is the auxiliary visualizer, and the other one is the main visualizer. So you will have orange numbers and letters on the left one and green ones on the right. In the game manuals, they sometimes tell you that the left one is just announcing and the right one is telling you what is actually enforced. This is true in many cases, but not in all. Not in all cases, not in every case. So this needs to be looked at with a bit of caution, actually. So what can this thing show us? If it's showing you 888s, then you have one. The jackpot, no, obviously not, but then it is in test mode. Then it will also light up all the other indicators. And the system will test itself. You will always have this when you power up your train in the beginning of a service, and this system goes into test mode and gives you the 8s, and then you know that the display is working actually. If the display is dark, then you can see that the system is inactive. You have this especially if you're running under TVM, because then the TVM cap signaling system is taking over the control and the KVB system is disabled then. So then the two fields are blank, dark. If you're getting those dashes, 3 orange dashes on the left and 3 green dashes on the right, then the system is active, and it is actually controlling the speed of the train versus the speed data that it gets from the balises. It does not tell the driver what speed it is controlling the train against, but the driver knows that the system is controlling him. Yeah, this is probably what CD Radar meant when he said absurd. I don't know why the system does not show the driver what speed it is controlling him against, but it doesn't. I don't know if it is a thing that would have been too complicated to do, or whether there is a reason for not showing the driver the speed that he is controlled against. That's how it is. When you're approaching a red signal or a buffer block, then the system will give you this. We have talked about this just in the beginning of the stream. 00, requiring you to slow down to 30 and approach this red signal. As soon as you get those indications, it is not controlling you necessarily against those 30 kilometers per hour, but it requires you. It reminds the driver that he has to slow down to 30 kilometers as soon as possible. And when getting closer to the buffer block or the red signal, really close typically, then you get the third one and have 3 zeros, orange zeros on the left, and then the system tells you that very soon you will be controlled to an approach speed of 10 kilometers per hour because you're really close to the red signal, and if you're too fast, then the system can stop you. What happens if you do not comply with the speed that you have to comply with, or this approach speed that the system is showing you? Otherwise, you will first get a white light on the V indicator, V for vitesse, speed, and that is showing you overspeed. On the trains in the Long Island Railroad, for example, or the Harlem line, on those trains you always get this overspeed indicator going off, and this is the French version of the overspeed indicator. If that light is off, then you get a warning by the system that you are speeding and that you have to bring down your speed. Otherwise, you risk getting a penalty brake. At the same time, alongside with this indicator, you will get this beep, 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 beep alarm that we have heard before, the corresponding penalty brake that we received in the game. So you have to slow down, typically quite heavily, and if you can make it, then the indicator will go off again and the alarm will go off again, and then everything is good. And if you can't, then you will get the penalty brake to stop, non-releasable. And at the same time, this second indicator here, this is a symbol that typically shows brakes, telling you that the brake application has occurred. In the game, sometimes this indicator does not light up, sometimes it lights up when you get a penalty brake of that kind. I have not managed to find out in what situations that it actually lights up and when it doesn't. Also, in some sources you can find that this V indicator should be flashing before you get a penalty brake application and go off, or be lit steadily after the penalty brake application has been initiated. But this second indicator should light up as soon as you get the penalty brake. At the same time, you get this indication, FU for freinage d'urgence, so that you know what happened. So the system does not tell you what speed it is controlling you against, but it is definitely telling you that you did not comply and got a penalty brake. And we have talked about this in the driving already. To release that, you have to hit your acknowledge button, and then the alarm will go off after the train actually has stopped. You can't do that before the train has stopped. You can hit the button, I think, but then you have to wait until the train has stopped for the alarm to go off. And at the same time, the indicators and the FU will vanish from the from the display unit, and either you get your dashes back, or sometimes, and this actually happens in the game sometimes, I've seen it actually happen, you will get an indication of that kind. Orange dashes on the left and double green zero on the right. And this is an indication, if I understood that correctly, require you to drive on side with a maximum speed of 30 kilometers per hour until you get to the next signal that is giving you a better or more precise indication of what you can do and go on. So this is an indication that you will probably get if the system does not have sufficient data after a penalty brake, that it can actually control you properly. So it will send you on side with a maximum of 30 kilometers per hour until you get better data at the next balise. So this does not always happen after the penalty brake, but sometimes it does, even in the game. What are those buttons for? You have a button that is called val, that is for validating the train data. Obviously, in the game, it is not even animated. You cannot press it. In real life, you would need it on certain trains to put in the train data, so that the system knows what train it is operating on. Some trains have it hardwired, so you don't really need this button. The purple button sets the system into shunting mode, then it controls in a different way a bit, and the purple color, we have seen it on the Jalon de Manœuvre in the TVM stream. a thing that is indicating that there is a shunting possibility, a shunting line diverging from your main track. So this thing is, something happened in my headphones. Is the stream still okay, AJ? Tell me if not. Yeah, this purple color in the French system, also on the carré violet, is always associated with shunting services. All good, that's good. So some program just crashed, obviously, and gave me a weird sound in the headphones. This third button here is the override button if you are actually allowed to pass a red signal. We have seen this in a lot of different systems as well. We have the Befehl 40 in the PZB system in Germany. We have the TPWS override button, for example, in the British system, and more of that kind. If we have permission to run or to pass a red signal, to prevent the system from stopping us, to stopping this Contrôle d'arrêt absolu system, we have to push this button, and then for a certain distance and for a certain length of time, the system will not stop us when we're passing a red signal. This is what this override button is for. The test button should initiate a test. I have not seen that it works in the game. It is animated, but I don't think that you can initiate a test, a self-test with it. This button here, the SF button, does not belong to the KVB equipment, but to the Crocodile equipment, more or less. I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the Crocodile system. By pushing this button, SF is signal fermé, closed signal, you can turn off the yellow lamp if you don't want to wait for it to be turned off when passing the next clear signal. This is what this button does, to turn off that lamp so that it is ready again for the next Crocodile that you pass. So I think this is what I wanted to tell you about the KVB system, at least on this slide. What I wanted to talk about in the KVB system is that it is controlling brake curves. So if you, for example, have a speed limit from 120 to 60 at this point here. So I use the speed signaling that you will encounter if you are running across a switch. If you are diverging over a switch that only allows 60 from a main line that allows 120. Again, speed signaling, we haven't talked about this. We will talk about this in a different stream soon. Would result in a speed profile of that. At the moment you can go 120, and as soon as you're going on the switch you are limited to 60. So what does the KVB system control you to? First, this is approximately the speed line that you would want to go. Obviously you cannot stop the train from 120 to 60 kilometers in one instant, but you have to slow it down gradually and then more or less go with the speed that is allowed on the switch. What will happen here on this speed sign? The Crocodile system will give you the beep alarm and you will have to acknowledge it typically, and you will get your yellow lamp on. And then the KVB system is checking if you're actually complying with this announced speed limit, and it will calculate a brake curve. First, an alert curve and then a brake curve. So it will calculate two curves, one higher than the other. The black curve is the brake curve, and that is what the system at least thinks, at what distance the train cannot be faster than this certain speed to still be able to make the reduction in speed limit. This is the brake curve calculation that we have in a lot of systems. In the subsystem, that is for the GNT in Germany, or in the Class B systems in Switzerland, for example, or in the Axis system we have it as well. The system is calculating a brake curve and is calculating at what time the train can have what speed and still be able to make the reduction in speed limit. So this is the latest point for the brakes to apply and to slow down. And before the train hits this brake curve, there is an alert curve a bit below, and when the train is actually going faster than this alert curve, then you will get this alert with the V indicator, the white light and the alarm. And then in our example here, the train was a bit too fast, was going over the alert curve, got the alert, slowed down, got under the alert curve again, and then everything was good, and the indicator and the alarm is extinguished, and the driver could just bring down the speed to the 60 kilometers that was allowed. If you hit the black curve at this point, or this point, or this point, or at any point, if you are violating the brake curve, then you will get the penalty brake. And this is the reason why you can get a penalty brake even before you even reach the speed reduction, the speed limit reduction, the new speed limit. A good driver should drive with the alarm sounding all the time, is what CD Radar says. Well, apparently this is what you do on Prague Metro. At least you don't fall asleep then if you're always running with the alarm on. Yeah, well, actually, in the game, to be fair, if you fail to comply with the brake curve and get the alarm, you will very soon and very quickly get the penalty brake, because the train cannot be slowed down properly anymore. So if you just miss the reduction in speed limit and go on with 120, at this point you are above the alert curve, you have the alarm, and very soon after you violate the brake curve and get your penalty brake. So typically, if you just miss the reduction, you will get the penalty brake very soon after getting the alarm. For getting to a standstill, it is more or less the same. Now we don't have a speed signaling, but a red signal that we can press. You are actually right with that. Yep. Yellow signal, red signal, NF. We have to stop here. So our speed profile is actually allowed 60 and then 0, because we have to stop. So we have to more or less do that and drive with this curve here. And again, we have an alert curve and we have a brake curve, and the same thing happens here. At this point, at the yellow signal, we get the alarm from the Crocodile system. We have to acknowledge it. We get our yellow lamp, and then we have to respect the brake curves. If we get an alarm, we have to slow down if we still can do that and not violate the brake curve. Otherwise, we will be stopped, and we will be getting those 0 indications from the KVB system. Most of the time already at the yellow signal, sometimes already before the 00, reminding you that you have to slow down to 30 kilometers per hour as soon as possible when you get the avertissement yellow signal, and pretty close in front of the red signal you will get the third 0 telling you that you have to slow down to 10 kilometers per hour so that you can make a safe stop in front of the signal. And then, past this point, the Contrôle d'arrêt absolu kicks in. This is the positive train stop at the red signal without any alarm or curves or whatever. It just stops the train as fast as possible. Same happens if there is not a red signal here, but for example, a prellblock, a buffer block, an heurtoir with a carré violet on top of it. So this buffer block with the carré violet is always considered more or less the same as the red signal that you are not allowed to pass. In case of a buffer block, obviously we don't really need the Contrôle d'arrêt absolu, because only the most obtuse of train drivers manage to pass actually the buffer block, and then the buffer block will try its best to stop the train. Last thing, COVID system. We will talk about this after we actually played around a bit with it. So I have prepared a second service. Let's see if I can find the correct one. It was the 1154. No, I have to put it into the correct place and have to find it. Méditerranée, TGV Duplex 211.45. I think this is the service that gives you always switching indicators on the TVM system, because there is a train running in front of us. So before I get back to CD radar and the chat, here you can see the self-test of the KVB system with the 8s. Here you can see that the button clears the light, just as we have discussed it. Let's turn on the safety systems. We have to get the pantograph up, wait for it to touch the catenary. Green indicator going on, we can arm it. Gauge lights, brake hold, emergency brake, brake test, all good. Reverser. CD radar was talking about the Matra system in the chat. Yeah, I don't want to change the subject, but one of our safety systems, the Matra PA135, sounds an alarm when the current speed of the train is close to the maximum allowed speed, not when it is exceeded, which basically means that driving with an alarm is correct driving. And interestingly enough, Matra system is from France. That is interesting. I did not know that about the alarm. Obviously, I have read about the Matra system, and I would like to see it in the game. To my knowledge, it is not in the game anywhere. So that would be a nice addition to it, and then we can have a stream and video about it. So, indication switched from zeros to 170. White numerals on black. While it is safety system for Metro and Stadtbahn. Well, that does not matter. We have the Bakerloo line in the game. This is light rail. This is Metro as well. So why not Metro Prague then? So typically when we are leaving Avignon and going on the main line, we would just accelerate through. And after the 170 restriction from the start, we will very soon get the 320 white numerals on green squares line speed. But on this particular service here, we're not getting it. We're getting diamonds, flashing diamonds. First 230, then 270 flashing. If I go by Sire Moon's 2-block ahead system, I will check. Flashing 270 on diamonds means I cannot exceed 230 at the moment. Now 230 and back to 270. So why is this happening? Why is this flipping all the time? We are always getting a new restrictive, a more restricting indication when we pass one of the TVM block markers, when we're entering a new canton. Like now we get a 300 line speed flashing, and then we passed the repair, the block marker, and we got a more restrictive. When the train in front of us is leaving the block or the next block in front of us, then our signal can upgrade and we're getting a better indication. Like now, flashing 300 instead of 270 on diamonds flashing. When we're passing the next repair, it will be downgraded to 270 on diamonds flashing again. So this is why we're always flashing. We are entering a block, getting a more restrictive signal, train in front of us is leaving a block, we are getting a less restrictive signal. Next time we pass a repair, we will be getting a more restrictive signal again. If the 2 block ahead driving style applies to situation of that kind as well, I don't know. It's probably not the greatest idea to go even faster than the 270 that get announced every time. So if I accelerate to 300 now, I will have to slow down to 270 again. If I slow down to 230, because it is the next step below the 270, then I can accelerate to 270 now again. So maybe I just stay at the 270 because it is more or less the average between the flashing 300 on greens and the flashing 270 on diamonds. And when we're even a bit slower, maybe we manage that the train is leaving the block before we are entering a new block, so that we get a steady 300. Now we get a 300, a steady one, but with a reduction at the next point. Yeah. See, the radar says this can be seen on LZB sometimes, this flipping. You also see that on axis controlled, or let's be more correct, on ATC controlled trains on the Harlem line, for example, or on the Long Island Railroad. If you are following another train, or in the Boston area, for example, that the signals are always flipping from one to the other, because the other train is leaving the block, you are entering the block. Bling blong, bling blong. So you will have to find some way of staying in between, so that you don't always have to accelerate and stop. But apart from that, I wanted to demonstrate the penalty brake that you can get in TVM. This is why I picked this service, because if we get a clear 320, it is hard to demonstrate a penalty brake. As long as we are getting those indications, 300 flashing on diamonds, 300 on green, flashing, we can still go 320. Because that is the next step above the 300. Regardless whether they are flashing or whether they are green or on diamonds. The maximum allowed speed is still 320. I was thinking, at least. But now we got a penalty brake. This, for example, is a penalty brake that you can release without rearming the main circuit breaker and without the train having to stop. You just release the brake, set the throttle to 0, and then apply power again. Then it still takes some time for the air to go out of the brake cylinders, so that you can actually pick up speed again. But AJ, this kind of penalty brake does not get you to a stop, or at least not necessarily. Now we for a very short moment got the 320 clear on greens, and now we are on 300 on diamonds non-flashing. because the penalty brake application obviously slowed us down so much that the distance to the train in front of us grew. So let's see if we can get another penalty brake, so that we might see better at what speed actually it kicked in. With 320 flashing, we can go 320. With 300 on greens flashing, we can go 300. Now we can go 320, but have to prepare for 300. With the 300 on greens flashing, we are limited to 300. So this is why we got the penalty brake before, because we went beyond the 315 in this case. Now we would have to go beyond 335 to get the penalty brake. Now we would still have to go beyond 325. So as long as we are getting those indications, we obviously cannot reach a speed that requires a penalty brake application so easily. But as soon as the indications drop and get more restrictive, let's see if we can get into the brake curve at this point here, because the system also controls you brake curve wise, but with 335 we will probably not be able to get this. Still 335 should be the penalty brake application speed. But as soon as the line speed drops to 300, now we got the penalty brake. Saw it, AJ? The indication dropped to 300 actually, and we were going 325, and that was below or more or less above the threshold, and this is why we got the penalty brake application. We can release it. I probably should not drive with the brake overcharge button on all the time, but it just makes it easier if you have so many penalty brakes all the time. We can again apply power. You can see it in the traction meter here. And since the other train is away, yeah, now we're actually building up speed again. Got the brakes released. Yeah, but you see, this can actually be quite unnerving with a train in front of you and always getting new signal indications. So let's have a look at what the signal is, what the system is actually doing. It is called the Contrôle de vitesse associé à la TVM. So this is the speed control system that replaces the KVB system and the Crocodile system when you are running in TVM. Then you won't get Crocodile alarms and you won't be controlled by the KVB system that only controls you to speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour. So apart from that, this system serves the same purpose. It checks if the driver is reacting to cab signals and the speed limits associated with this. So all you have to do is to respect the cab signals, including brake curves. We will see what that means, and respect obviously stop indications. So it has also this positive train stop facility or feature that stops the train if the train tries to pass a stop marker. Otherwise, you will get the penalty brake that is releasable, as you have seen. So, and where is the threshold actually? This depends on the speed limit, the vitesse limit, and the vitesse de prise en charge. This is the speed at which the penalty brake will be applied. If you only are allowed to go 30 It should be. This is a mistake here. This is not 35, it is 30. If you are actually allowed to pass a stop marker, you have a speed limit of 30, and then you will be controlled to 35. So this I will have to correct. Indications from 80 to 170. The vitesse de prise en charge is 10 kilometers per hour above, and when you are allowed to go 230 and more, then you have 15. So if we, as we were allowed to go 300, then you won't get the penalty brake application before you hit 315 kilometers or more. If you are allowed to go 320 respectively, then the threshold will be at 335. But obviously, as soon as the indication gets more restrictive, then the threshold will be more restrictive, and then you can get a penalty brake application out of the blue. If you have to stop at the signal, then obviously any speed that you are traveling at the stop signal will result in a penalty brake application. This is the positive train stop here. What happens at 200 kilometers per hour? I actually was not able to find out whether it is 210 or 215 at this point. This is because the sources that I found were more or less always connected with the older system, the TVM 300, and in the TVM 300 there was no indication between the 170 and the 230, and with the actually the 160 and the 230, and the 200 kilometer indication was only introduced with the TVM 430, and for that I did not find any sources. So if you know that, please let me know in the comments whether the threshold is 210 or 215 here, and the +5 applies to the 30 kilometers. Actually, this is when you are allowed to pass a stop marker, passable, franchisable stop marker. Let's have a look how this looks in the diagram. So this will be our reduction in speed limit from 230 to 170. The indications that you are getting is like, for example, the 230 line speed here, not in our game, but let's say on this track here, this is the line speed, and it is flashing because this is one repair, that is the next repair. In the second block after the block that we are running in, there will be a reduction in speed limit. This is why the 230 on green are flashing. At this repair here, you get a new indication, the 170 on diamonds, warning you that at the next block marker you will have to slow down or be slowed down to 170. And at this repair here, the limit takes effect, and then you are at the 170 restricted speed because of traffic or whatever. So you will have to slow down your train in this manner, for example. And what does the system do? This is the speed line that it controls you to, more or less. The overspeed control curve. It is not controlling you to the limit that is allowed, but it has a bit of a margin of error. And as we have just discussed it, at the speed of 230, it is in the range where you can, when you have a plus 15 kilometers per hour margin of error, so the system will not apply a penalty brake if you are staying below the 245. And here at the 170, this is the range where it is only a margin of error of 10, so it will control you to 180. And in the old system, the TVN 300, this would be just like this red curve here, like a step. It would just kick in with all of a sudden 180 instead of 245. The newer system can do brake curves, so it will calculate a brake curve that you have to stay under, and so the penalty brake application can happen even before you get to the point where you get the new limit. But there is no alert curve, so you will get no alarm, and not necessarily when going faster than the allowed speed anything will happen. But as soon as you go beyond the threshold, beyond the curve, then you will get the penalty brake that you can release again. So CD Radar, what did you see? I can totally see how in this system, where in the Czech Republic, everyone would drive at the speed of 334. Yeah, why not? I can totally see that happening. But it is obviously not what it is intended to happen. And yeah, I guess you need to be really good as a driver to yeah, prevent your train from gaining 1 or 2 clicks in this situation, especially since you have to negotiate longer lines and more diverse lines than we in the game, where we are always hard put to not get surprised by a certain acceleration of the train due to a gradient or whatever. Yeah, let's see how this looks when we actually have to stop. In this example, we can go 80 at this point here. It is flashing because 2 blocks ahead there will be a stop marker. At this repair here, we are getting the zeros telling us that we have to stop at the next marker. The next marker here is an NF marker, a non-passable, non franchissable marker, so we mustn't pass it, we have to stop here. And if we were to pass it, we would get the all red indication. And our speed line should have this, it should look like this, more or less. We have to slow down and then stop in front of the marker. And this is what we will be controlled against. The overspeed control curve here in this range, plus 10, 80, plus 10 is 90. And then the brake curve until the standstill. Probably will not go until this point, but will try to stop you a bit in front of it. But I did not have enough room here on my chart to show that. What happens if this is not an NF marker, but an F marker, for example, one that you can pass after you stopped? So it is not a stop and stay signal, but a stop and proceed signal. Then you also will get the red indication here. And you will have, for this to happen, I guess, if it is an F marker or it is an NF marker and someone is lighting the white light. For this situation, maybe I should have depicted the white light here, but we have talked about this in the last stream about the TVM stuff. Even if it is an NF marker and the white light is lit, then it is to be treated like an F marker, but you have to press this button on your KVB display, this override button, to pass an NF marker with the white light on. And in those 2 cases, if it is an F marker to begin with or an NF marker with the white light, then you can pass it, but you have to stay below the 30 kilometers per hour driving on site, and the system will control you to the 35 kilometers per hour here. I guess that's it about my presentation today. So we can drive our train home, and we will not get any more penalty breaks, I hope, until we get to Marseille. With our new penalty brake application here, the other train might have gained enough distance to no longer bug us. Yes, and this is why we're getting a clear indication now. The train is away far enough so that we get line speed for the next 2 blocks ahead. So I picked not the best spot to get a penalty brake, because the train has to accelerate uphill. You can see we make it just all the ascent, and accelerating on the ascent is obviously hard for our heavy double traction Duplex TGV. But this allows us to have some externals. So the VACMA system, by the way, is still on when we are driving with TVM. Only the Crocodile and the KVB systems are turned off. The VACMA is still on, so we are not supposed to stand up and walk about and stop depressing our pedal. This is the spot where we are running into the limit in line speed to 300. Downhill, now the acceleration works much better. We're aiming for 300. By the way, in the objective marker you might have seen that this is one of the non-stop services, so we are not supposed to stop in Aix-en-Provence. .300 limit. And we're back to line speed. Well, I'm actually trying to learn enough Czech to be able to distinguish which words are supposed to tell us what the sentence is talking about and what are verbs and stuff like that, so that I can at least understand those regulations when I get some help with a translator program. But to be fair, Czech is not an easy language to learn. So far I did not get beyond sentences like the cat is not chasing a big dog but a little mouse or something like that. And I am too fast. But still, even though I'm too fast, I'm not getting a penalty break, because I stayed within the 15 kilometers per hour margin of error. Yes, such documents use professional language that sometimes even a native speaker does not understand. You're totally right. The thing is, I tried to translate some of those regulations with Google Translate, and the outcome was disastrous. I did not understand a single word of the English that Google Translate gave us. So I thought I need to understand more about the syntax of this language. Thank you very much. So I can say Ste dobry przyjaciel, CD Radar. Thank you very much. So we're passing Aix-en-Provence now. Maybe I should focus a bit more on my driving to not constantly speed. This was the train on the right, by the way, that was giving us all the headache. Two blocks ahead means we have to slow down to 200 at this point. Now the 160 on diamonds is no longer flashing, so this is the speed that we are supposed to end up with. Yeah. CD Radar says maybe it would be nice if even the block markers had some kind of distance deduction in the form of signs after several hundred meters to tell you when the next block marker is coming. I guess that the distance between the block markers is more or less the same, and if you use the 2 block ahead method, you should be good anyway. Maybe this is why they don't give you this indication, so that drivers don't try to max out the distance until the speed reduction kicks in. So, getting close to the power changeover point. Get the panto down. Greet the TVM section end sign here, cap. with a strike. Switch the power mode. Prepare for the 140. Ah, we did not make it properly. Was a bit too fast. One click or two. Getting close to the ref sign. Pantograph up. Ref sign. Rearm the main circuit breaker. Apply some more speed. The next reduction in speed limit is not announced by any signs, at least not any signs that I was able to find in the scenery. But the second speed reduction, so the one after that, I actually managed to find the signs that announce it, not the signs that actually mark the beginning. But the announcement signs are there. After I've watched a real-world cab ride of this route, I saw the signs there, and then I tried to find them in the game, and they are actually in the game, but you can't really see them well for whatever reason. So now we have to slow down a bit, because at the next signal bridge we need to be down to 110. And before that, I think, or shortly after, now this is the one for the 110? No. Here, those losanges, you might have seen them. Diamond-shaped signs on top of the signal bridge. They are not really visible easily. They announced a reduction in speed limit to 60. This is why the Crocodile alarm went off and I had to acknowledge it, and now I ignore it. I acknowledged the Crocodile, so the Crocodile is happy, is not stopping us, but I am going 110 with the current speed limit, and you can see it on the chart here that we are approaching a speed limit to 60. And now we're getting the overspeed indicator and the penalty brake for the incoming speed reduction to 60, even though we have not reached it yet. This is what I meant with the brake curve control. And again, I can acknowledge it. Alarm will not go off, and the indicator will not go off until the train got to a standstill. If you hit the acknowledge button before, then it will stop then, and then you can rearm your circuit breaker. Now we obviously have to release the brakes again. And see if we can get this thing running again. Again, it takes some time to get the air out of all the brake cylinders along the train. At the next signal bridge, we will we slow down to 30. Again, no signal, no sign, but you will see the double zero in the visualisateur auxiliaire. The double zeros on the left side and the KVB display, reminding us that at this avertissement signal we have to slow down. Here they are already there to 30. The Crocodile will go off once more. No, it won't. Okay. It could have gone off, but it didn't. So last penalty break for the day. I will just have the train roll into the station. We keep below the 30. At the moment the KVB is controlling us to 30. As soon as we are getting close to the heurtoir, to the buffer block, the third zero will appear, and then there will be an approach speed of 10. And if we are still running with 30, at some point the system will stop us because we are running faster than the 10 that is allowed. Hopefully the train will be stopped before we crash into the buffer block then. So in case the driver is distracted at this point, not reacting to the buffer block, let's see what happens. Maybe we just crash into it, and it was just... See? It was too late. The system did not manage to stop us in time, so we derailed. Maybe they should put the balise with the 000 a bit further ahead in front of the buffer block. So the system went off, but the alarm at this point obviously did not help things, and we ran into the buffer block and derailed. Well, this was my tour de force through all the possible penalty break kinds in this train, quite a few, and through the French safety systems that are installed in the TGV. I would really love to have a normal French train with more KVB, with more French signaling on French routes. Not only the high-speed variant, but, well, some other train. Freight trains in France, passenger trains, and there are some more interesting things in the spectrum of the French signaling and the French safety systems. I think we will have at least one more stream about French stuff with speed signaling, and we can have the flashing double yellow aspects and the non-flashing double yellow aspects for the speed signaling, and the many different speed signs that they have in France. And we won't really have the opportunity to look at those pre-announcement signaling rules and other stuff. So it would really be great to have more French lines, French locomotives in the game. And also the Czech metro, obviously. Thank you very much. Thank you, AJ, for moderating the stream. Thank you, CD Radar, for all your input. Have a nice week. Take care. And thank you for staying with me. Bye-bye.